So tell us how you really feel, Mac, eh? It's time to start harping on rugby. Hello, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harpin On Rugby, where with the help of some fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. Joining me first this week is someone coming to us from the Royal County of Meath, earning cap number 64. Welcome back to Mr. Tom Coleman.
Evening, Jeff. How's it going? How are you?
Good to see you. And also with us is someone flying the Leinster flag for us over in London. This is his fourth Harpin appearance. Hello to Mr. Hugo Gordon.
Thanks very much for having me back, Jeff.
Good to have you both. Okay, so let's crack on with our feature match of the week, which was, of course, Leinster v Connacht in round 8 of the 24-25 BKT United Rugby Championship. It was played at the Aviva Stadium on Saturday, December 21st. It was another chilly evening around D4 with a strong wind that was forecast as westerly, so not altogether clear who that would benefit. And after Mike McCarthy and Leo the Lion got through the pre-match ritual, sporting their festive Christmas gear, it was Connacht's Iwane kicking off towards the North Stand, Tom.
Yeah, well, I suppose we got an early sign. Sometimes we reviewing Leinster, where's the areas of the game we're going to win or where could we get on top? And it's not often we say the scrum because generally there's other stuff going better than the scrum that gets the headlines. But, it was after an initial sort of cagey start to and fro, it was sort of the scrum that really started to get us going into their territory. Buckley was pinged a couple of times in the first 5 or 6 minutes. There was sort of a wheel scrum, and then we got a scrum penalty against them as well. And that was giving us territory into the Connacht 22 a few times. Now, I did say we'd concentrate on the scrum, and we will get to the line out. It's a different kettle of fish, but we'll stick to the positives. It was giving us territory into the scrum, so much so that I think we ended up getting a line out, or was it with Maul, and it was collapsed, but we chose another scrum. On the back of it, so comfortable we were thinking the scrum was going to give some sort of platform for us to wear down Connacht. Connacht front row did look like they were struggling, Heffernan and Buckley most of the day, and I think Leinster sort of fell back on that a bit throughout the game as one area where it would give them some sort of a platform. Sort of off the back of those first few early dominant scrums in territory, we'd end up with lots of phases, and Bundy ended up winning a good penalty to relieve the pressure from Connacht. I suppose if the scrum was one early sign and our positive about how things were going to go well, I think another sign for Connacht what they were going to do was how much they were flooding the ruck. Anytime we got any sort of phase together, Connacht were flooding the ruck from all directions. We could easily get into a debate about how much of it's legal, and I'm sure if a Leinster fan is complaining about flying into rucks, they're going to get a lot of eye rolls from other teams' supporters listening to them. We won't have much sympathy, but look, you have to play the ref, and I think Connacht did well throughout that first half on really putting pressure on Leinster's ball and trying to slow. Make sub 3 second rucks as the inward is, keep as many of them beyond the 3 seconds as possible, and that knows you're going to limit Leinster. And Connacht really did go after a ruck. Those bodies coming in from all angles. There was a lot of clever, as you try to take the jackler away, there's a lot of clever line on the wrong side or rolling in across as you're trying to exit the ruck, and which is all fine. I've no arguments with that. If my team was doing the same and it was working, I'd be encouraging it. So it's not a slight against Connacht, but it was a bit of a free for all at the ruck at times. Players going off their feet it just wasn't the thing that was being pinged. It's funny, during that times, even when we were doing that, the ref did warn Connacht a few times about letting the ball out a few times. I think even on the Bundy penalty that I earmarked, he was told, or at least Connacht were told, to let the ball out, and the penalty ended up going towards Connacht. So there was a little bit of inconsistency there, and maybe what the communication was from the ref, what he wanted around the breakdown. I suppose the next sort of major moment of the first half, really, and it was only when the camera went back, was sort of the head contact on Gus McCarthy by the Connacht 10 Ione. Um, I know Mac Hansen, I'm sure he alluded to that in his post match interview. That the TMOs or the officials looked at it about a dozen times before they came to the conclusion there was a penalty. Um, it's funny in all the conversations about the Geordie Bundyaki incident. It's sort of forgotten that this was just a penalty only. It was only given as a penalty only, and I'm not trying to voice whether it was anything worse than that. But if it was a given yellow card, I'd argue any Connacht fan, our friends over in Master of None in the West, probably wouldn't disagree that it was a yellow card, because it was head on cheekbone, and you could see Gus McCarthy, the physio, trying to work on McCarthy's cheekbone for a few minutes afterwards. It was a fair whack. I'd say it was a right stinger on the cheekbone. And look, at the end of the day, it was head on head. Look, it was a penalty, but there was no major discussion about whether it was anything worse than that or anything more than that. In all the Ferrari conversations about the Bundy Geordie incident, shortly after that. We had our second sign of some issues. Started to get a few series of lineouts, and the woes from the previous game against Claremont, raised its head again. I'm not sure when Jack is driving back to his house in the south side what excuse or what rationale he's going to come up with for this one. Whether it be the laws in January, but look, it didn't go well. We had a knock on from RG, the line out, and then we had a second. We had another sort of, it was a bit of a sloppy line out. But off the back of it, there was a rare sort of Luke McGrath burst of pace, and but their winger Jennings ended up having a good steal. Shortly after that, we had the now infamous Geordie Barrett Bundy Aki incident, which seems to be the main focal point of this whole game. If you were to read all the sort of post match stuff online, my own thoughts on it was, look, I think penalty, yes. Yellow card, possibly. But if Gus McCarthy's is not a yellow, well, then I'm not giving a yellow for that either. That's the consistency I want. If I only got a yellow for his head knock on, I'm not saying two wrongs make a right, but yes, they're both yellow cards, or they're both not yellow cards. So in this instance, I'd have no issue if there was a penalty given there. There'd be no sightings on the back of this. Neither was red cards. Neither Ione or Geordies were anywhere remotely close to red card territory, and I think anyone alluding to the fact there's a way with the fairies. Sort of, it's funny enough. I suppose Connacht's gripe will be it shortly after that we ended up getting our first try. It was sort of a good strip by Ross Byrne in contact, and we ended up getting a penalty, and we kicked into their 22, and for once we were able to get first phase ball off a line out. And it was a lovely try from Andrew Osborne. And those first phase tries was a hallmark of Leinster for years, and I would say we see them less and less, but it just shows you if we can get a functioning line out going at all anyway, well, how dangerous we can be off that sort of first fail ball. I suppose the middle of the half, then after that, it was just a series of again, bit of territory from both teams. Again, it was a little bit messy kicking. Connacht's exits weren't great. I suppose it was. I wasn't at the game myself because I was dying of the flu. Probably still have the after effects of it on my voice, but the wind obviously was a lot stronger than it did look on the TV. Connacht were struggling with their exits, so they weren't really trying to get pressure on R22. Shortly after that sort of to and fro, and I suppose the next major moment in the half was Luke McGrath again with a nice burst up the far wing, and it was a fairly cynical no arms hit by Jennings. It was late. I don't think anyone should have any issue whether this was a yellow card or not. It was late, and there was no arms, and he stepped into doing it. He knew what he was doing, and he got a yellow card. So sort of from the penalty after that, we again got territory into their 22. We had a nice line out maul off Deegan off the top. And Jordy Barrett really showed his class in that move. Just deftness of hands and timing to be able to suck in defenders and put a very happy Charlie Tector away. Um, and you could tell how well Charlie Tector has actually got. It's sometimes you look for these moments when you look back in the game. How many of the I know the Leinster team or any other team will do the same. This so that you can go in and celebrate with your teammate having scored a try. But it was quite visible to me how well Tector has got from the reaction of his teammates when he scored. And I thought that was a nice moment for him. Like there was just, a lot of Leinster is such a professional outfit, and we can nearly accuse them of nearly been android robotic in scoring tries. But you could tell that, even players like Jordy Barrett, or RG Snyman or Slimani, some experienced guys were so delighted for Tector when he scored. Um, so that was, it was 14-0, and we were sort of fairly efficient on the chances that we did get, as long as we were able to get our line out away. We were sort of 14-0 up. One of the key moments, maybe during that period of time before the try, was obviously Jack Conan had gone off on about 21 minutes, and he was a loss because he was giving us good carrying momentum into the Connacht's backline, and he was making those yards and getting that Connacht backline on sitting on their backside a bit and pushing their defensive line back. And we definitely lost that when he went off. Max Deegan came on for him, and unfortunately Deegan went shortly after half an hour as well. So they were two big losses. On the back of it all, it meant that the likes of Alex Soroka, who's playing AIL, and he's a bit of a fan's favourite for lots of reasons, and stuff he does for Ukraine and etc. He had to go the full 80 minutes, and you tell he was feeling it in the last 10 or 15 minutes. He literally left everything out there. And I thought I'm sure, I thought he did really well in the first half. He cut a couple of nice steals at the breakdown, put himself about. He showed a nice bit of physicality, and was great to see Ryan Baird come back on for even if though the circumstances weren't right. It was good to see Ryan Baird after his short term away with Trinity, coming on for Leinster again, and it was good for him to get through a period of time. He's come through that extended return to play protocols where he's had two little head knocks in a row, and that sort of triggered a bit more time off that he had to take. And look, Leinster have shown over the years, with Caelan Doris and James Ryan, they do manage these situations properly. Maybe sometimes the communication on how bad or how good injuries are mightn't be as clear, but from Leinster, but and we tend to fill in the gaps ourselves online. We're wondering about players' injuries, but in fairness to Leinster, when it comes to anything to do with the head, they've been quite good about looking after players, and it was great that Baird was able to get through the game and seemed to show no real ill effects of the previous two knocks that he got. But yeah, we did feel coming up towards half time. I felt myself that I wasn't sure if Connacht had the kicking game to exploit the 14 points back in the second half, which thankfully it turned out it didn't. But it definitely looked like it could be a bit squeakier than we wanted, because it was at least a 10-point win, it felt like, looking into that for the second half. But all in all, considering that we had players like Soroka, Dermot Mangan, Charlie Tector, Young Osborne playing, to name but a few, and it's, with a few internationals, I think we were always wary about how this game would go, because Connacht came up, it was a pretty loaded, fully stacked Connacht team. They had all the internationals, they had a lot of key players in the key positions that they would start their biggest games of the year. So Connacht obviously had targeted this game as a win, and I think, given the cohesion in certain areas of the pitch, given our makeup of R15, I thought the team did quite well. Obviously, there was lots of issues I've touched on about the line out, and other issues. We lack of continuity in the attack. We've spoken about what Ross and Luke bring in attack under this system. It's not a direct criticism of them. It's just sometimes systems don't suit players. And Robus, as a fan, I'm slightly nervous about the two lads starting and how much it can bring out of our attack, especially on the back of our attack not fully functioning anyway. We definitely lose something when Prendergast or Gibson Park or Frawley isn't playing in those key positions. But yeah, it was good to get to half time, 14-0. Lots to work on. And yeah, just it as I'm sure you'll take up in the second half, it got a lot squeakier than I thought.
Yeah, I mean it was quite an eventful first half. All right, we had most of the ball from the start, and it just took us about 20 minutes to finally get over the line. There's a lot of attacks going, finishing because some of them were tackle penalties, some there were line out losses. There was lots of it took us a while to get it, and eventually it was like you say, a first play set piece move. The yellow cards, yeah, a lot of people giving out that they looked at the Gus McCarthy. But the suggestion, when people say that, the suggestion is, oh, they wanted to keep looking until they found something. But the only issue there was that the referee didn't see the head contact on the big screen. He couldn't see it. And he kept saying, I'm not seeing. So the TMO had to show it to him so he could see it, because it was definitely there. There was some head contact. I mean, I think they eventually arrived at the right call. Now the Geordie incident was different in that they didn't stop for any TMO. And but that doesn't mean they didn't look at it. But I think it's important that if they do, they say it. You know what I mean? They say it's been reviewed. I think there should be some kind of communication there, especially from this particular ref, because this is a ref that likes to talk a lot during the games. You could almost say, you said yourself, he's coaching you through. He's saying, "Oh, don't stop." He's saying, "No, no, no," when someone's coming through, or you know what I mean. And he does like to. He likes to let the breakdowns go on, which is fine if that's what he's going to do. But like you say, you have to be consistent with it. And there were some times when he said, no, don't come through. They still kept coming through, but then he gave the turnover. There was an incident. We'll get to it in the second half, but there was, just for the sake of this, there was an incident in the second half where he said, release tackle, but the tackle, he literally just said it when Gus McCarthy actually got the ball free. And then he gave a penalty because he didn't release, but how he was still getting the word tackle out of his mouth as he released it, so it's a tough one to call. But anyway, the Geordie incident, I think on the end of it, I think maybe Bundy hammed it up a bit. If it was a serious head contact, he was heavily involved in the next play. He was a support runner on the next play. You think, well, why wasn't there an HIA if it was a serious head injury? I do think there was contact with the head. I don't know, was there shoulder as well in it as well? He was also in from the side. I think that was an important important characteristic. But like you said as well, Connacht were flooding the ruck themselves as well. It was kind of a game where a lot was being let go. So it's a conversation. We'll talk more about what was said after the game later. The wind, I think the wind was keeping Connacht pinned in their own half the pitch. It was more of wind across the pitch, though. I think a lot of times they were going for a touch on the wrong side. Then eventually, towards the end of the second half, they started taking kicks. Even if it was past halfway, they were going towards the west. They were kicking towards that touchline because they were getting more purchase on their kicks in that direction. So it took them a while to get the hang of the wind, and it took them a while to have any kind of possession in our team too.
I think maybe losing their 10 and not having call it a proper 10 who would be used to playing that position, and probably didn't have their cause until later on when they realised that. And then just finish, I do agree with you. Look, we use the parlance of the Wild West just because it's Connacht, but look, if the breakdown becomes a Wild West and incidents happen, like that's the game that's you wanted to be played. It makes it very hard for the referee to ref it. It doesn't mean foul play should be, but you can't.
Yeah, careful what you wish for.
You can't give out about the ingredients or the cake, I should say. If you put the ingredients and say, look, well, I'm going to make the fucking breakdown an absolute Wild West show, and then complain about every little detail. You're going to find one incident in the game where a guy should have been pinged, but look, I said during my
and just to be fair, I get it when you're that incensed about one particular incident and that guy goes on to get player of the match. It doesn't help. But anyway, Hugo, over to yourself. What did you make of the first half?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty happy with it overall. I mean, it was a little bit frustrating. As Tom said, that the line out kind of just a bit of a mess again. And it was frustrating in a way that we only went in 14 points up. We had all the ball, we had all the territory, we spent a lot of time in their 22, and actually, very unusually for us, we did a pretty poor job of kind of converting that into points. But all things considered, I mean, it was, we were still going in halftime, 14 up against a good Connacht team. And this was, I was going into this game, I was quite nervous about this one. We were putting out a fairly heavily rotated side. Okay, there's still a World Cup winner and an All Black in there, but it wasn't our first 15, and Connacht was something close to the strongest available team they had, including their international. So there was real banana skin potential to this game. And so I was happy enough to be going in at 14 up and kind of seemingly completely in control. I thought the scrum was going very well. As Tom said, it's not an area that's kind of traditionally an area of strength for us, but actually I thought that went very well. I haven't necessarily been I've been a little bit critical of Slimani sometimes since he's joined Leinster. It didn't always have the smoothest of starts, but actually this is where he is so good is in that scrum, and I think he really did show that yesterday. But yeah, kind of all things considered, I was pretty happy with it and kind of hoping we'd kick on as we went into the second half. And maybe didn't quite live up to the billing.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, on the tries themselves, they were two really well taken tries, two really well worked tries. First of all, you had the little show and go from Andrew Osborne, and the second one in particular, it was just the timing of Barrett's pass and the positioning of it, putting Tector through. It's just we were talking in our preview about how we had all our NIQs that we were supposedly constrained over. We had them all starting, but it wasn't just about them. It was their partners in their units. You had Snyman alongside Diarmuid Mangan. You had Barrett alongside Tector. You had Slimani alongside Gus McCarthy and Jack Boyle. There was benefit to be had for Irish players just being on the pitch, playing a full game with them. And we saw that, especially in those tries. You just saw highlights in the first half. You saw the two tries, the 14-0 Leinster. You're like, oh, yep, Leinster on the way to the bonus point, no problems. If you didn't see the rest of the half. But of course, as we all said, we all know that was a slightly different story. But anyway, that was the first half. And like you say, the halftime score was Leinster 14, Connacht 0. Well, before we return to the pod, first a little reminder of all the different places you'll find us in the Rugosphere. To get access to all our latest content, as well as our presence on all the different social media platforms, you can bookmark us at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. We do most of our social media on Blue Sky this weather, so do follow us there if you can. And please be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe as needed. And so with Leinster 14 points to the good, Ross Byrne got that second half underway, Hugo.
Yeah, and things started, well enough. Kind of, we picked up where we left off. Really, we managed to turn them over off that kickoff. Won a penalty off the ensuing passage of play, and Ross Byrne chipped it over to make it 17-0. And at that point, you're thinking, no way Leinster blow a 17-point lead at home. That never happens.
Never.
But actually, kind of that was kind of the last kind of real kind of moment of Leinster territory for quite a long time. For kind of the next really 10 minutes, it was all Connacht. They turned us over in turn off of their restart. Kind of really started to push us back into our 22, started to win penalties. Although Mac Hansen, who had a relatively quiet first half, but he really started to impose himself in the second half. We were coming in off that wing a lot, finding space, but creating space for others as well. And he was giving us real problems, and we did start to give away quite a few penalties under that pressure. The one that you mentioned, Jeff, with Gus McCarthy maybe getting a little bit unlucky with that rip, allowed them to kind of get into our 22 again. And they kind of really then start to pile up. The pressure kept going for the corner. We kept giving away penalties off of subsequent lineouts. I think we managed to give away 2 penalties in a row for taking out the jumper, which is a little bit brainless. I did quite like, there was, in the midst of all this kind of back and forth in penalties, Snyman and Murphy got into a bit of a brawl, and Soroka went flying in, and we mentioned Soroka. I'm a big Soroka fan. It's great to see him back. I think it's been about 19 or 20 months since he's last been able to play for Leinster. He's had such bad luck with injuries, but I think he's a very exciting player. One of the things I really like about him is that bit of edge. Now it's going to be a bit of a double-edged sword. I think we nearly got a penalty against us for him flying in, but actually having a few players in the team who've got that edge, who've got that kind of a bit of bite to them, I think is a real positive, and I'm very excited to see how he goes if he can just get a bit of luck with injuries, because God knows he's had none so far. But we're still kind of pinned back in our 22. We did change out the front row at this stage. Barron, Milne, and Healy came on. We also brought on Gibson Park, but kind of short term, it didn't really do us much good. And off, after that second taking a player out in the air, Ryan Baird with the most obvious taking a player out in the air, jumper out in the air I think I've ever seen. Literally arms wrapped around the guy in the air. We got a penalty warning, and Lee Barron was unfortunate enough to be on the end of the kind of the yellow card when it did come shortly after. Very much deserved in terms of just the sheer number of penalties we were giving away. And down to 14 men, the dam just couldn't hold anymore, and Oisin Dowling, managed to touch it down shortly afterwards. Ford shanked the conversion, which was fortunate enough for us, but kind of a bit of a sign of things to come. We did manage to again kind of turn them over off of our subsequent kickoff. Snyman managing to kind of claim the ball helps, having a guy that big trying to reclaim the restarts. And Aitzell King, I think, was a little bit unlucky to get penalised for taking a player out in the air. It letter of the law, it's the right call. It's just a little bit unlucky. I think every player in the world tries to make that tackle on Cordero. Unfortunately, that did snuff out a pretty promising attack. And it did unfortunately lead to more Connacht pressure. We got saved. Mac Hansen sent through a very clever grubber kick, and Pierce O'Connor was racing onto it, and we got saved by the corner flag, the ball coming off that. But it wasn't long before they did manage to kind of turn that pressure into points. Scored a really great try, actually. If it wasn't against us, I would have loved it. They managed to find space out on the left wing. Aki broke through, good charge down the left wing, gets stopped, but Connacht are able to recycle. They're able to sweep the ball out to the right, and Jennings is able to kind of just waltz in over the line out on the right wing. What frustrated me here was, okay, they've scored, but he is out on the right wing. The defense at that stage just stops chasing, and he's able to just turn in and put it on the post. And kind of our defense has been a real area of strength for us. And sometimes teams are going to find that space, especially when you're down a man. You're going to concede tries. This was one I think that Leo Cullen will be frustrated by, because that's giving them 2 points that we didn't need to give them. And it's it's the difference between then being 7 points up and then being less than a converted try up. So that was a little bit frustrating. And just all of a sudden, having been completely in control. And I feel like I've said this fair bit about Leinster and Ireland over the last few months, but from being completely in control, all of a sudden we're in a fair bit of trouble. Momentum's really swung against us. And it was very costly sin bin periods. Barron did come back on shortly afterward. Harry Byrne came on, and Jordy Barrett ended up moving back to fullback, I think, from the kind of way we seem to be setting up after that. But clearly we kind of needed to settle things down. Luckily, over the next few minutes, I think we kind of were able to do that. We were able to kind of get back into their half for the first time in about 10 minutes shortly afterwards. And unfortunately, with kind of Connacht really under pressure, and with us right on their line, Andrew Osborne, who broadly had a good game, as you said, scored that lovely try in the first half, but the most brainless of penalties with the neck roll to just give them an easy out. And when we really, it looked for all the world like we were about to score, and those little kind of frustrating things that it's perhaps it's just a kind of function of rotation, it's a function of young players getting a little bit overexcited, but there was quite a little bit of this and that in this half, just kind of those little kind of mistakes kind of starting to pile up. We did, we were able to build some possession, some territory, for the next, from about 60 minutes to 70 minutes. Connacht actually didn't really manage to spend much time in our half, and while we weren't able to score, I think that in part helped be the winning of the game, just because it meant the Connacht weren't able to take those chances. We did have a lovely opportunity. We won a penalty. We turned down the decision to go to the post. Jordy Barrett was fairly incensed by us not doing that, but we kicked to the corner. And actually, it nearly worked. Mangan was through and again looked like he was absolutely going to score. And then Ken Prendergast with a pretty amazing last-ditch tackle to hold it up. I do think we should have gone for the points, but a little bit less critical when it takes a defensive action like that to stop us from scoring. But it did mean that Connacht were able to clear. Soroka shipped an absolutely huge hit off of Ainger off the goal line dropout, and we got turned over. And then from that point again, we're back under quite a bit of pressure. Connacht kind of getting back into our 22, starting to kind of try and find those gaps again. We're starting to be a bit on the back foot again. And ended up with another yellow card for us when Jimmy O'Brien took out Hansen in the air. My first reaction was I thought this was harsh, and then when I looked back at the replay afterwards, I actually thought it was the right call. Jimmy O'Brien was never getting there, and it was, Hansen did come down pretty hard. So fair enough yellow, but at this stage, kind of all fairly nerve-wracking. Connacht with all the momentum behind it again, us down to 14 men, especially given how the previous Indian period went, was pretty nervous about it. And Connacht did, I think this game they came very close to winning this game. They were able to break out on the left again, but for a very good tackle by Jordy Barrett on Jennings, and I thought Jennings was very good again today. But for that, and we're able to kind of put them under a bit more pressure, and they end up knocking it on afterwards. But there's that moment where it just looks like they're gonna do to us what we did to them last season when we scored a late try to win it. And then, fortunately, off of our ensuing scrum, Gibson Park manages to kind of, I think it's Caelan Braid slightly overcommits in defence. Gibson Park's able to step inside and we're able to break up the left wing. Actually, I think we're not too far away, I think, actually, from that being a length of the field try. But in the end, Connacht ended up having to give away the penalty and we're able to kick over the points and claim an 8-point lead. And that's kind of the way it finished at the end. Probably that scoreline makes it look more comfortable than it was, because certainly in those last couple of minutes, it was anything but comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, we got there in the end. I mean, it was I got into trouble online for using the word makeshift with regards Leinster's 23. We were talking about this in the preview as well. I wasn't using that as an excuse. I'm just saying that there's only so much you can judge a 23 that you're likely never to see Leinster put on a park again, at least definitely not in April and May. There were a lot of changes to the Leinster lineup, but then also with the 6-2 split, when there's so many enforced changes, even though we had extra forwards, we didn't, we wouldn't have expected to lose both Conan and Deegan. I don't think we were set up for that. And then on Connacht's side, they had Cahill Ford basically being there at half for the bulk of the game, having lost to Wani early. And but like you say, Connacht did really well to find the space when it was there in the second half. They had Hansen on the wing and they created the space and got it to him when that space was there. But one of the issues for them is that although they got the 2 scores, it took them a long time to get each one. I mean, they were both in the 10-minute sin bin period, but there was one right at the very start and one right at the very end. They had to really put it all in to get those tries, and we were just able to hold them out long enough. So that was a factor as well. The early stages of the second half, I noticed we were talking about how difficult we spent a lot of time in their 22 in the first half, and we were talking how difficult it was. It was kind of the other way around, but I heard Josh Murphy on the ref mic saying to the ref, "Why are you saying no? He's legal to do that." That kind of way. They were getting in his ear. They were protesting everything that at every breakdown. I think that was part of their plan to try to. I don't know if it was manipulate the ref or whatever, but they were trying to sort of maybe even things out. I don't know what it was, but you could hear a lot of chat. I know a lot of people talk to the ref anyway during the game, but I noticed, considering what was said after the match, I think there was plenty the ref was doing in both ways to kind of even that out. But anyway, Alex Soroka, I thought he was very impressive. Indeed, these were literally his first Nienaber minutes for Leinster, which is amazing. He spent more time wearing the Emerging Ireland shirt than he has Leinster over the past couple of years, the way his injury profile has gone. And on the Connacht side, I was impressed with Seamus Hurley-Langton as well. He was a real good poacher at the breakdown. They had some good performance. Like you say, there was an amazing stop from Cian Prendergast. The way he knew how to catch him and fall back with him. And there was no way he was getting it down. That was a great stop there. What did you make in the second half, Tom?
Yeah, look, I think the Butties have summed it up pretty well. I think putting my Connacht hat on temporarily, Connacht should be kicking themselves about this game. People will roll eyes at makeshift Leinster, but at the end of the day, there was a lot of makeshiftness about this Leinster team. Boyle and Mangan and Soroka in the pack, and then when Conan went off and Deegan went off, that didn't help either. And then, the back line had Balbriggan's, Atsol King and Andrew Osborne, younger Jamie's younger brother, and Charlie Tactor. That's well over a third of the team, if not more. Really, only the halfbacks was a pairing of experience. There was inexperience scattered throughout every other line in the team. Connacht coming up fully loaded, as is their right, and really not getting anything out of the game. They'll have themselves to look at, as much as they're protesting about the referee's performance and what decisions they get or they don't get. I do agree wholeheartedly on, I know I've mentioned him already, just echoing what both of you have said about Alex Soroka. I think he's the real makings of being our next sort of Reece Ruddock, somebody that can be there week in, week out, throughout the URC, and sort of be a mainstay, abrasive type six that will, sort of takes it. He's a completely different type of player to say than Max Deegan. He's more, as I said, in the Reece Ruddock mold, and he has that sort of leadership qualities, I think, of leading from the front quietly like Reece did. So I just, if he gets an injury-free run, I think he could be great for us and for Leinster. But yeah, look, 8 wins from 8. We can't ask for anything more than that. That's really what it counts. And these younger guys have got exposure against a very decent, more than decent Connacht team. If Connacht put that 15 out against most other teams in the league, they'll be sniffing a win in most games. They're very, very accomplished 15. I did like Josh Murphy's performance. He's that bit of dog and a bit of abrasiveness is that we liked at him when he was with Leinster. And I like the fact that he was getting stuck in, even though he was wearing green. I like that attitude from him. He wasn't afraid to bring it to Leinster. I think Cian Prendergast is a guy that was, if he was probably out of a different province, would get capped a lot more. I think he's an outstanding player. Whether he'll get the chances because he's at Connacht, I don't know. People talk about Gavin Coombs, etc. And I'm not just picking on Coombs, I'm just naming him because he's another back row player on the fringes of the Irish team. But if it was me, I'd take Cian Prendergast 7 days a week and twice on Sundays, in blue. Over the likes of Coombs. I think he leadership, line out play, just rugby nous. He's got it all, and I'd like to see him get more chances in green. He's always on the fringes, and he's a really, really, really quality and operator. And I'm sure our Connacht fans wouldn't appreciate me saying it, but he's definitely one player I'd love to nab out of the West and bring him back to Dublin to play with his brother. Maybe he'll want to pair up with his brother in the future. But yeah, look, delighted with the win. But Connacht will be kicking themselves. Whatever about kicking the referee, but they'll be kicking themselves.
Yeah, it was on that press conference afterwards. I mean, I can see the frustration. Connacht, like you say, Connacht were entitled to feel like they had momentum going into the match. They had a couple of good, really good European wins, and they were on a kind of a high. So they would have felt as confident as they ever would coming to Dublin to play Leinster, whatever team we were putting out. And the way that second half progressed, they really had a chance. But was it all from the referees' calls, or were there did they make a few mistakes on their own side as well? I don't know, but listen, it was the way it turned out anyway. Like you say, another win for Leinster. Leinster 20, Connacht 12. Well, elsewhere in the rugby world, the other Interpro this weekend was far from a classic, but it was Munster who stole the win right at the end, as it turned out. That was the only derby match this round so far with an away win, with the Stormers, Sharks, Ospreys, Benetton and Glasgow all finishing on top, with one more match to play in the round between the Dragons and Cardiff on St. Stephen's Day. All of which means Leinster remain top with 8 wins from 8, although Glasgow's bonus point allowed them to close the gap to 6 points, with the Bulls, Sharks and Cardiff next on the table, all with a game in hand. As for the other provinces, Munster go up to 6th, while Connacht and Ulster are now 10th and 11th respectively. Meanwhile, it was the opening round of the Women's Celtic Challenge competition. It was also Derby Day as the two Irish sides met in Donnybrook, with the Wolfhounds overcoming the Clovers 33-7, including tries from Amy Larne, Linda Jugang, Eve Higgins, Kelly Burke, and Stacey Flood. Going back to our feature match from Saturday, we all know what Mac Hansen had to say after the match, but as for RG Sneeman, he seemed a shade more diplomatic, saying, quote, the lineouts didn't really go as planned for the last couple of weeks, but Connacht put a lot of pressure on us and we're happy to get away with the win, end quote. And from a fan's point of view, at the full-time whistle, Lorcan Murphy said this on our Facebook page, quote, changes and early injuries proved very disruptive. Came out on the right side of a dogfight 2 weeks running, better than cakewalks and nothing to show at the end of the season, end quote. Do you disagree, or would you have said the same thing a different way? Well, we always leave the post open on the Facebook page after Leinster and Ireland matches. Why don't you join in the conversation next time? And so this brings us to our final thoughts, starting with Tom.
Yeah, look, as I've touched on already, I think it's all about, it's all about getting the win at this time of the season. I think it also should be noted that I said that there was got to 30,000 in the Aviva on Saturday, which is outstanding. And you'd wonder,
they had seats on the top tier.
You'd wonder, are the Leinster Brain Trust rethinking their RDS, because we're definitely selling out a lot more than the new capacity of the RDS will have. So interesting to see, and it looks like that trend will continue. Whether people are more happy with the facilities, and I suppose unless you're diehards like us who's willing to sit on rickety seats in the RDS, or not the plush ones you get, Jeff.
There you go. Oh yeah,
up in the press box. But we're happy to go to the RDS regardless. But that extra sort of 10,000 fans are obviously don't mind paying in for good access and in and out of the stadium, and maybe facilities at the bar and stuff like that, or food, and maybe that should be something that I'm sure Leinster are looking at. I know it looks like we're going to be there for 2 years now anyway, given the stadium. So it'll be interesting to see what we can do down the line, and try to keep those supporters after we've moved back to the RDS, because it'd be a shame for not to be able to give that outlet to fans that are happy enough to come along and go to these games. But look, that I just wanted to mention that on the crowd. I think we sort of touched on the performances, and still lots to work on. Really looking forward to the game on the 27th. I think the best moment of the match, as I said, I was watching it from home because I was a bit under the weather, but the best moment of the match was Leo Cullen's press conference afterwards saying, and I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but he basically said, we have a good load of lads to come back for next week. And that was the happy moment I was waiting to hear. So I think, we'll have a good load of lads back for next week. And that was music to my ears after a close win.
I won't be able to say Makeshift when he names his team on Christmas Eve. What did you make of it, Hugo?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of said a lot of it already, but there's definitely some things to work on. The lineout was poor. Again, it was another poor second half where we didn't score a try. There's been quite a lot of those recently. It is a bit of a worrying trend, and we're able to get away with it, more often than not recently, but we're not going to get away with it forever. But like I said, a win is a win. Still undefeated. Rotated squad. I won't use the word makeshift, but but reality is it was a rotated squad, and while there were some very impressive performances in there from some of the kind of the more established players, Jordy Barrett obviously got player of the match, and he was incredible again, and really a bit like Sneem coming in. He's come in and he looks like he's been there forever. He really is. He's clearly not just here to pick up a paycheck. He is really pouring everything into the games when he's been playing, and it's been great to have him. But I thought Ross Byrne was very good again. He was very good against Ulster recently as well. I think he is, kind of maybe freed from some of the pressure of being Leinster's starting 10. Actually, kind of, he is looking a bit more kind of looking a bit more like the player he kind of used to be, I think, and that's been very good to see. But the kind of the performances from the academy guys, I think, has been really really great. I mean, Charlie Tector again going into the season, I thought there was a pretty decent chance that Charlie Tector would never play another senior game for Leinster. Seemingly the bottom of a growing pile of international tens, and he's reinvented himself at centre. He was very very good again today. We've already mentioned Osborne's try, and silly penalty in the second half, but again really put himself about. I thought Dermot Mangan was very very good. Really great physicality from him. Very unlucky to not score that try when Cian Prendergast held him up. But there's a lot of we've a lot of really, really great talent coming through, and it really is, it's kind of cause for significant optimism. So overall, I can't be too down on that result at all. For all that, it was kind of a bit nerve-wracking at times. Nice to head into Christmas still undefeated, and bring on Munster. I'm very excited for that one.
Absolutely. Well, listen, lads, we're going to leave it there. Many thanks again to Tom and Hugo for joining me. Have a great Christmas, both of you, and I hope to have you back on again soon. Thanks, lads.
Thanks very much, Jeff.
Cheers, Hugo. Cheers, Jeff.
As for our next match of Harpin, well, obviously this coming week won't be like the others. Our only output planned is a Munster v Leinster preview on Tuesday afternoon. But still be sure to follow us on any or all of our social media platforms, which you'll find at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. In the meantime, have an awesome Christmas, everyone. Slán.